Welcome to Module 5. In this module, we are talking about actually shooting your videos. We've talked about a lot so far, setting up the channel, the equipment you need, setting up your space, the types of videos to create. In this module, we're going to start talking about actually shooting the videos. So the first thing we're going to talk about is camera settings and basics. Now, this one might get a little bit advanced, and so if you don't want to watch that, that's totally fine. Skip this module or fast forward through it. What I would recommend for the vast majority of people is just set your camera on the auto settings. It is going to be plenty good for you to get the type of video you need, and the auto settings are so good nowadays that most of the time there's no need to do anything else. But if you want to be a nerd like me and nerd out on this stuff a little bit more, we're going to talk about that a little bit more right now. So as far as YouTube goes, you can shoot in the 1080p or the 4K. Most people aren't watching in 4K anyways, or there's not really a need for it. I've heard that YouTube will push your videos a little bit more if you shoot them in 4K, but the editing gets really heavy on your computers, meaning it's very slow. The upload times take a long time, so the 1080p is plenty good for the vast majority of use cases. Let's talk about frame rates on cameras. This is debatable, okay? So the frame rate is basically how many pictures are taken in a second, right? A video is just a bunch of pictures taken and lined up side by side. And so there's four types, or four kind of main frame rates. There's about 24 frames per second, there's 60 frames, there's 120, and that's it, right? So I guess 3. So this is the way to think about this. Most movies are shot in 24. 24, because there's less frames per second, gives you a little bit more motion blur. It's more natural to what the eye actually sees. 30 frames per second is a little bit more crisp, and that's what I would typically shoot at, right? The next is 60 frames per second. Now 60 frames per second means there's 60 pictures per second that make up the video. Now this is typically where you will see like newscasts shot at. This doesn't really matter a whole lot. The only reason I mentioned I shoot at 30, I actually shoot at 60, and the reason is because it makes it easier to cut and splice the videos. You might hear my baby back in the background, maybe not, because I have the shotgun mic I talked about earlier. So here's the important thing to understand about frame rates. When you have your shutter speed, the shutter speed always needs to be about double the frame rate. So if you're shooting at 24 frames, your shutter speed needs to be 1/50th. If you're shooting at 60 frames per second, it needs to be 1/120th. It's very important, or else your video will look choppy. Okay, white balance. Again, defaults on the camera are probably going to be plenty for that, but if you want to set your custom white balance, you can get one of these little tools, and this will help you set your white balance. So you hit your white balance button, you take a picture of this card, and that will set your white balance up perfectly. What is white balance? Well, if you ever seen a picture or a video where it's like kind of blue or kind of green or kind of orange, that's because the white balance wasn't set correctly. And so it's very important. It'll make your video look funny if it's not set correctly. Again, probably the best option here is just to do the auto on your camera. So that is the camera settings and basics. In the next few videos, we're going to talk about framing and composition. We're going to talk about lighting. We're going to talk about B-roll and on-location filming. So I'll see you in those next videos. In this video, we're going to talk a little bit about framing and composition. Nothing too crazy, but I'm going to give you some basics. Then we're also going to talk about lighting a little bit. Lighting is very important for video and photography. So let's talk about composition framing first. The first thing to understand is the rule of thirds. Now, if you notice on my screen, I'm using essentially the rule of thirds. My person is lined up in the center of the screen, but then the camera, there's like, if you third out the screen, I'll put little lines on the screen here. You see my eyes are about at a third. I'm not way up here. I'm not way down here, right about a third. And so this works really well with photography too. When you're shooting out in the wild, out on location, is sometimes people will put horizons right in the center of the screen, or the focal right at the center of the screen. It is always best to put it on the thirds. So we can have thirds vertically and we can have thirds horizontally. So a third vertically would be about here, 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 and here, right? So we can put our points of interest at those intersections of the rule of thirds. So pretty straightforward. Just kind of keep that in mind when you're shooting your photos. You'll notice, maybe not even realizing it, that the photos always just look better when you are doing rule of thirds. So next thing, just make sure when you are shooting your videos, when you're doing these talking heads especially, that you're not chopping off the top of your head. You're not sitting way too close to where you're chopped off, unless you want to do it for style purposes, right? And you're not sitting way too low in the camera to where they can't see your chin. I like to sit back right here. Sometimes I will zoom in a little bit like this. Sometimes we'll zoom out a little bit, but you want to fill the frame, but you don't want to be overbearing in the frame, right? So that's composition. Very simple, very straightforward. The next thing, let's talk about lighting. Now, lighting is very, very important. We already talked about in some of the equipment, the softbox and the ring lights. A lot of the ring lights now have softbox kind of diffusers on them. But we want to make sure, especially when we're shooting indoors, that we don't have harsh lighting and that our lighting is a good color. You see back here, this is like the incandescent bulbs, very orange. If those were pointed on me, my skin would be very orange, right? I've got a white neutral light that is pointing on me right now. And you'll notice that the lighting changes the look of the video. So if I'm over here, I've got shadow on this side of my face, very bright over here. I've got a light up here. I could turn this on to fully light my face and fill me up. Another thing to consider is the lighting difference between, turn this one off, the lighting difference between you as a person and your background. I've got a dark background. You see a slight cast of light off my shoulders. That's from the light back there. The light's reflecting off the wall. But you want to make sure that there is some contrast in your videos. That is going to add a lot of interest to your videos, and it just makes them more interesting to watch. And these are going to be things that are so subtle that people don't really realize it when they're watching, especially if they don't know photo and video. But subconsciously, they will realize it. Something will seem off. It's the same reason why when we draw faces, even if someone's a good artist, if something's just a little bit weird, we can pick it up right away, even if we're not artists, right? Even if we can't put our finger on what it is, we can pick that up right away because we know faces so well. So the same thing happens with photo and video, is we want to make sure that we have good lighting. You can do directional lighting, like, let me move this a little bit. I'm gonna have to do this. See how this is different here? Very, very more, much more dramatic, right? With the dark and the light. For this video and for this video series, I've got the light right in front of me, so I'm just fully lit, very evenly. So play around with the lighting a little bit, set your camera up, move the light around, discover what you like best, and then I would say just keep it consistent for your channel. That way you kind of develop a theme and a look that people will begin to recognize with your channel. Let's see. Oh, the other thing, daylight versus artificial light. Daylight's very nice. We are used to seeing people in normal sky daylight, so it's very pleasing to the human eye. Again, when you're buying your lights, make sure to just pay attention to the color of the lights, whether that's going to be the orangish type lights. We don't want blue lights. Let me show you what a blue light will look like. This is kind of an orange light, very white light. Orange, blue, white. You see the difference there. Orange, blue, white. So the lighting makes a big difference, guys. Pay attention to your lighting. If you don't, something will just look off on your videos. So that's it for this video. I'll see you on the next one. In this video, we're going to talk about B-roll in shooting outdoors for B-roll for your videos. So what is B-roll? Again, we already mentioned this in an earlier video. This is basically when we cut to different scenes to keep the video interesting. Now, this is one thing about composition in videos or editing in videos, may or may not be worth even spending the time doing for you. But when we change scenes often, it keeps people interested more, right? So this is like a talking head video, a little bit harder to keep people interested in. But if you shoot B-roll out around town, something I like doing, you can use all kinds of different tools. So you can go ahead and just use your camera, walk around and film, get some nice downtown photos. Got someone pulling up in my driveway. You can get something like this, DJI Osmos Mobile. Super cool. This is called a gimbal. Again, this is gonna help keep things nice and smooth. Another really cool thing about these is it comes with a software that allows you to track you. So you can set this down somewhere and you can be walking around and it will actually turn and move depending on where you're at. It'll track you. So cool thing, I think I paid like $120 for this. Next thing you can get for B-roll shots is a drone. $300, $400, $500 for a DJI drone as well. You can always pay a drone photographer to get drone photos or videos for you, but you're probably going to spend about as much on that as it would cost you just to buy a drone and have your kid shoot drone video for you. So very easy way to get a bunch of cool B-roll for your shots. I love doing this during neighborhood tour videos. You drive around, you supplement it with aerial views of the neighborhoods, or if you're doing just kind of wider shots of the city to make your intro or your outro to your videos, whatever it is, drones are always going to be a very nice way to capture extra videos. So that's it. Pretty simple on the outdoor, the B-roll. Just pay attention to what you're shooting. Pay attention to how shaky it is, the angles, the rule of thirds we talked about before. And if you're doing stuff like neighborhood tours, parks, restaurants, it's always good to have B-roll that you can insert into your videos as well. So that's it for this video. I will see you guys on the next module.